Hey everyone, it's Terry with Terry's Tidbits, and last week was Midwest Dreamin 2014. It was their 10th anniversary, and it was fantastic. I would encourage you, if you've not been to a Dreamin event, or if you've not been to Midwest Dreamin, take the time to go to a Dreamin event that's in your area, or come to the Midwest Dreamin. It's really good, and it's not that expensive to go and get some really good education on Salesforce products without the sales pitch of Salesforce, which is also a plus. So I had the privilege of speaking on the last day, the last session, before everything kind of started to wrap up, and I spoke on flow. And this is a little bit more of an advanced level topic of flow. I run through 10 tidbits that help you build your flows in a more successful, more efficient way. So take a look at this video. I call it Beyond No Pink in Loops. All right, everyone, it's 10 o'clock. That's about as loud as I talk, so that's it. All right, everyone. I do hope that you'll listen. Hey, everybody.
Good morning.
I'll come to the back here. Say hi to everyone. Hello.
Okay.
Are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to the last session of Midwest Dreamin 10th anniversary. Yeah, it's amazing. Any volunteers for the event or people who help put this all together in the room? Other than our room monitor, you've got one. Can we, at least two, I think there's a room monitor somewhere back here. Thank them for this. This is awesome. If you get a chance, say something to those that have put this together. This is amazing. It's gone off flawless from my perspective. Hopefully it has for you as well. So that's fantastic. For those sponsors who are sitting out in the rooms here, this is also your last chance to speak with any of those. Please take the time to do that if you haven't already. It's so important that to have them here, have them supporting events like this. So take the opportunity to do that. And then finally, my last required slide. If you have not downloaded the Whova app, please download it so you can at least give me an evaluation after this is over. I would appreciate that. So thank you so much again for being here. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Terry Miller. I just love doing this stuff. I enjoy the process of mentoring and teaching other people. I've told people often, if I could do this all the time and get paid what I get paid now, I'd probably do this all the time. It's just fun to be able to connect with people. I've had at least 3 or 4 people, I think, come up to me in the conference this week and said, "Hey, you were on a phone call with me and you helped me through a flow." They remember me. I feel bad that I don't remember them. But when I tell you things like my QR code's up here, it's got all my contact information in it. You can scan it. If you run into a problem and you don't have Salesforce support to help you through it, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you to try to see what we can do together. I feel like the community has done so much for me that it's an easy way for me to give back. So if you get stuck on something, seriously, give me a shout. Happy to probably not remember you. But also happy to help. I'm a Salesforce MVP, 17 certifications on the platform, including application and system architect. I don't know that I'm going for the CTA thing. That seems like you have to be smarter than me to do that. And so I just am not quite at that point. But I lead the Des Moines user group. I'm a study group leader, credential ambassador. What that means is I help write your certification exams. So if you hate them, Mike Reynolds, I think, is here somewhere. You can blame him. But we have a good time putting those things together. We call it Fight Club as we argue about whether or not an answer is right or wrong. It's a lot of fun. I also help people, and a lot of people know me most from the study groups that I do, helping people get their certification. So if you are trying to get your admin certification, your advanced admin platform app builder, or Sales Cloud, I have a whole set of study group videos where it's led by people like you. These study groups, when I do them, it's a handful of folks that we come together. I just kind of outline what it is we need to cover in our topics, and they all go out and do the research and bring back a presentation for everybody to kind of learn from each other. So it's a great way of helping you get your certifications. I will be doing probably, I'm thinking nonprofit is what I think I might do next, because nonprofit is kind of there's a gap of information out there, and I think it might be helpful to start to put something together related to nonprofit. So follow me, you'll see information about that when I'm ready to pull that together. But all of the study groups are on YouTube. You can go to YouTube/Terry's Tidbits, it'll be there. And the terrystidbits.com. There are practice exams out there as well that I've put together. And for fun, if you want to see Flow in action, go take a practice exam, because that's all written in Flow and presented publicly on the Experience Cloud. So I often speak about Flow, and most of the time I'm speaking from the perspective of a brand new Flow user and trying to break down concepts that might be a little bit confusing for those of you who are brand new to Flow. Any new to Flow people in the room today? Okay, there's a whole set of videos and training that I have on the website as well for those of you that need that. The rest of you, I'm assuming, feel pretty good about your Flow work. You understand what variables are and all of those topics. So this session is going to take us a level deeper than what I typically would speak on. So it's going to be a little bit of fun, I think, here today. I do need to have like 6 or 8 volunteers come up front, if you would. Like now, 6 or 8. And form just a circle here. If I could get maybe 1 or more. Anybody else? It's not a trick.
I feel tricked. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but I don't care. All right, sure, come up. Come around and we're going to form a little circle here. And we're going to hold hands because we're the Ohana group, and it's
We're actually getting into this.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, sorry. That's the hard part. Now, what you guys represent is I'm in this circle as well. We represent a loop, okay? And you're all elements inside of this loop. I'm the actual loop element that has the records that are going to be processed through the loops. And when that record comes into the loop, I'm going to do this. Oh, wait, I need one more volunteer that has a timer. You have like a stopwatch on your. Perfect. Thank you. You're going to be in charge of this. So when the record comes in, we're going to raise our hand. You're going to then raise the hand of the person next to you, and it's going to be kind of like a wave. Okay. So let's practice this before our timer guy gets ready to go. Ready? All right. Go. All right. Cool. All right. You got the idea.
One loop.
One loop. Yeah, this is a single record going through this loop. Are you ready, timer? You're going to tell us when to start, and then you're going to hit stop when this hand over here gets down. Are you ready?
I'm just about there.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Everything's loose. Everything's loose.
All right.
Are we ready?
Ready.
Ready, set, go.
All right, stop.
3.38.
3.38. Do we think we can do it any better than that, guys?
Yeah.
You can sure.
All right, try it again. Okay. Ready. 3.8.
Set, go.
All right, good.
2.3.
2.3. Look at that. 2.3 seconds. Now, what's your name?
Steve.
Steve, you look like you're fairly athletic. Steve, you're going to be, and we might need to rotate here slightly so Steve ends up over here. So if we can kind of just scooch a little bit. Steve, you're a pink element now in our loop. And as a pink element, you have to run all the way up to the Salesforce servers to go do something like get records, update records, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So inside this loop, you're going to have to run up to the Salesforce servers, which are in the back of the room, and then come back up front. Okay, are you ready? Ready? Timer guy, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's go, team.
Ready, set, go.
He is pretty darn fast. Look at him go. All right. There he is. All right. Super. Woo. All right.
5.92.
5.92. Oh, you don't want to try it again?
No, no.
You're good? All right. I was going to give you another opportunity if you wanted.
Go.
All right. So thank you for you guys volunteering. There's a small, large, or medium, large, and extra large shirts up here. I hope that you'll find something that might fit you. Feel free to grab a shirt on your way back to your seat. Now, the idea here, although it's kind of fun, is simply a simple way of representing why we don't put pink elements inside of a loop. Pink elements are our gets, there are updates, there are deletes, and I'm missing one, creates. No pink in loops. That's why the session is called No Pink in Loops. And these guys will have a shirt there that says that same thing on the back of it. That's kind of fun. So thank you for your participation. So this is what it might look like. We've got a loop that we come in, and those of you in the back of the room, even those probably up front, you probably aren't going to be able to see these flows that I'm going to show you. It doesn't really matter because you can see the colors, and you know that pink elements are things that has to go up to the server, do something, come back. And your orange elements are your logic elements doing stuff locally there and within the environment. Blue elements are screens. So I love the fact that whoever designed Flow came up with that because it makes it really easy to see within our flow. So we're getting some records. We're going into a loop, and we've got an update record in the middle of that loop. Every time that record hits, it's got to run up to the Salesforce servers, come back in. It's very costly. Those pink elements just take a lot of effort, and you saw the delay in our time as we went through that. So you might say, well, Terry, I have to update those records. How do I go about doing it? Well, inside your loop, you're going to use an assignment, and that assignment is going to define a record, the record that needs to be updated. It might, let's say we're updating an opportunity record. It's going to have the ID of the opportunity, and maybe we're updating stage to close one because we're all great salespeople. So we're updating all of those opportunities to close one. This defines the record. This one is throwing the record into a collection, and that's happening all throughout that loop. Once we exit the loop, we do a single update to the opportunities at the end of our flow. That's how you would do no pink in loops. Some people will combine these two. I don't have an issue with combining them or separating them. I kind of like them separate because I think it's a little easier to read. Wow. I was kind of excited about that. I was really excited when I came in on Wednesday and I walked in the room and they had pink and blue. I thought that was like perfect. All right, so tidbit number 1, no pink in loops. I think we've explained that one to death. Now on this particular screen we have 2 flows. We have one on the left, one on the right. Both of them are doing the same thing. They create 2 task records. This is creating 2 tasks. This one is doing the same thing using assignments and a single update call to the servers. How many of you think the one on the left is the right way to do it versus the one on the right? Okay, the one on the right. Why is the one on the right approach?
Less pink. It only goes to the server once.
Goes to the server once, yeah, less pink. Perfect. So tidbit number 2, simply minimize your pink elements in your flow. When I was researching this topic, this was something I hadn't even thought about that I thought was kind of clever, is how many of you remember when Lightning first came out? It was like super fast, right? We all loved it. Yeah, so it was so fast that they had to implement 3 times updates, 3 updates every year. And in those updates, they also update the APIs of the platform. And since then, I hope most of us would say that it's faster than it used to be. Okay, all right, good, thank you. If you have written a flow that is maybe several years old, it's got an API version that is back in the time when the system wasn't as performant as it is today. And so if that is you, go into your flow and take a look at that API and update that API to a more current version of API. Now, I'm not saying you should go update every flow every time there's a new release. Don't walk out thinking that I have to do that. But if it's old, it's probably not a bad idea to update that API. Again, one that I had not thought about, that's your tidbit number 2, update to the latest
Could
APIs.
that break it?
You better test it. You're not going to do it in production, right? All right. Okay, just checking.
But could that break it?
There's a potential anything could break. So, yeah.
It's working, why do it?
If it's working, why do it? That's a good question. Maybe it will perform better. I would still try it in a sandbox, test it out. If you can get away with moving that API. And again, I'm not saying if it's on API 60 and you want to go to 60, what is it, 3 that's current, 61 is current. Don't do that. That's silly. But if it's way back in like 48 and we're now at 61, it's probably worth testing that. You had a question?
No, not a question, just a comment to add to that. A lot of people don't realize, so like, there's some limitations in older versions.
Oh, yes. Yeah, good call out.
Like, for example, lead assignment rules or approval processes used to not trigger flows. And if you're on a newer version,
Yeah.
those updates can trigger flow, but you have to be on the newest version, or that version. whatever
Yeah,
it
good
is,
call,
to do
good point.
something.
So I don't know if you could hear that in the back. What he said was that with those new APIs, it also gives you additional features like approval processes that are available in the newer APIs that might not have been in an older version of your API. Thank you. This topic is one I think I have right. I'm hopeful that there are smarter than me people in the room, because if that is the case, please correct me if I don't have this right. I think I got it right. We're going to talk about how flows are processed, and we're going to do that by talking about transactions and bulkification. And we're going to start off with our transactions. Transactions are, you're familiar with the idea of when you save a record, things go through the order of execution, operations, whatever you want to call it, and then it does all that stuff, it comes back, and then your transaction is done. Same thing happens inside of your screen flows, and we've got a screen flow here. You can see by the colors. Again, it doesn't matter what it's doing, you can see the colors to kind of get a gist here. A transaction in a screen flow is going to run until it hits something that causes it to stop. A screen can cause it to stop, a local action can cause it to stop, a wait element can cause it to stop, and of course if you finish the interview, the entire flow, it will stop as well. So what does that look like? So this is a screen flow, so it's probably got we'll just say it's got a button somewhere in the system that kicks it off. So when I click that button, I'm starting a transaction that's going to run up until it hits one of these items. In this case, you can kind of see the dotted line up at the top. It's going to run until it hits that screen. That screen then stops that transaction until the person hits the next button on the screen, and it's going to go process all of these other items until it hits another point of stopping. And it's going to do that all the way through your flow. Now in the lower section here, we have a decision where a transaction now is going down potentially two different directions. One of them hits the screen, the other just proceeds off the page here. That's your transactions. So the easy way to think about that is anything that causes the interface to stop will end a transaction. Why does that matter? It matters when you are dealing with larger flows, especially where you have per transaction limits of 100 SQL queries, or that's your get elements, querying up to 50,000 records total. And then 150 DML elements, those are all of your pink elements except for your gets, so that's your updates, creates, and deletes. You can process 10,000 records there in a transaction. Anybody confirm that they know that's true, that I got this right? Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. That makes me. Again, I was like, there's there's so much you can try to digest and understand in some of these technical documentations, and I felt pretty good that I had it right, but thanks for that confirmation. Let's talk about bulkification. Bulkification, in our example that we're going to use here, we've got 3 records. Let's say that it's going through like a scheduled flow. And that flow looks like this, where we've got a couple of times where we've got pink elements inside this flow. This is something that I really like about flow, that if you're a developer, developers in the room, any of you? If you're a developer in the room, you're going to like this too, because either that or it's going to make you mad, because in Apex, we have to code for bulkification. And it's a pain in the butt. Here, inside of Flow, they've got the advantage on us in that each of these 3 records will run in what they call a interview, which basically kind of sort of in my head, it just makes me think, okay, it runs within its own context. Up to the point of hitting a pink element. So watch over on the very first flow, that record is going to go down till it hits that pink element, and then it's going to kind of hang out there. Now granted, this is happening in milliseconds, but the second record and the third record are going to need to catch up with it, and when it gets to that same get, Flow is going to then bulkify that and send it up to the Salesforce server to do what it needs to do and come back with whatever it needs to come back with. That interview is going to then continue, where the first one goes to the next pink element. The others catch up. You'll notice in this scenario, I'm going down an end on this side. So that particular interview, once it hits that end statement, is really done. But the other 2 now are continuing, and it needs to go bulkify those records and go up and get that information from the server, come back. And it's going to continue to do that all the way through our flow. So in a multi-interview scenario, there's actually 2 forms of bulkification. And I tell you this because when you leave the room, you'll be able to talk to people and say, hey, did you know there's 2 forms of bulkification? One form is called functional bulkification. The other is called cross-batch bulkification. We're not going to talk about the one that that Flow doesn't do for you, but Flow does do the cross-batch bulkification for you. And so if you geek out over that sort of level of detail and knowledge, there'll be a resource link that you can go to that will help you understand the difference between these 2 if you so desire to do that. But in essence, as it hits pink elements in the interview, things stop and they commingle together, go and run all at the same time. Governor limits. If a governor limit is hit during bulkification, the entire transaction, remember we defined transactions in the previous slides, that entire transaction will be rolled back. If it's any other type of an error, like maybe it's I don't have access to the record, or I am competing against some other process that's currently updating that record, Flow is going to attempt to save it 3 times. If it fails on the 3rd time, then it will display an error for you. All right, this is another quiz attempt. So up at this is a screen flow. Obviously, we got blue up there. So it's a screen flow, and we've got a create records is that first pink element on the screen. Is this a good design or a bad design? Good design? You like this one? Okay, what's wrong with it?
Creating something that doesn't have. You're collecting everything after the creation.
Yeah, that's one thing. There's nothing happening at the end of the screens. So, yep, that's true. What would happen if I hit this first screen and then I decide I'm going to cancel out of the flow? You've created a record already. And your transaction stopped right here. So there's no rolling back that record. It's already there. So if they cancel out and then they come back in and run that flow a second time, you now have a duplicate record that's been created. Okay, so yeah, this is a bad. I do like the fact that they at least put a fault path on there. That's nice. So yes, bad.
I have a question. Would the record even get created if, like, if on the opposite there's a handful of required fields?
Yeah, and it would. So I'm assuming that inside that create, it's defining the record. So whenever possible, create updates and deletes, or avoid create updates and deletes before your first screen. That is your tidbit number 4. Tidbit number 5. Never hard-code IDs. I, as a consultant, I get to see a lot of your flows, and I'm not going to be judgy. But I do see this so frequently. And I get it because, you know, and the training that I would initiate new people with, I'd give them a little bit more grace here, but because I just want them in playing with it. I want them to get comfortable with the idea. Let them come back later and fix this kind of thing. But I still see this so frequently. And so you might say, well, how do I go about not doing it? I need the ID. How do I get around hard coding? And there's a couple different options here for you to think about for avoiding hard coding. I still see, when you go into a flow and you define record ID, I still see people define that as a text variable. Which, if it's defined as a text variable, all you're doing is getting the ID of the record that is initiating that flow. All you have to do is change the definition of that variable from a text variable to a record variable, and then you've got all of the values from that record coming into your flow. So frequently I would see them just get the ID, and then the very first element inside the flow is a get to go get the record that could have just been passed right in. Okay, so thank you. So that would be the first thought. The other one that I like, and it's kind of pseudo hard coding, and you can argue with me on it if you want, but a lot of people don't know about custom labels. Custom labels, you can go into setup, just type in custom labels, and when you do new custom label, it's going to ask you for a name, and it's going to give you a space for a value. So maybe I want to have a certain, I'm going to do this differently in just a second, but we'll just say it's a record type ID. I need a certain record type ID. I could put that in a custom label, and then inside of my flow, I can reference that very similar to referencing any other variable inside of my flow. It's just going to be called $label, and then whatever you named that label will be available inside your flow. Now, are you hard coding an ID still? Yes, technically you're hard coding an ID, but you're doing it in a place where you don't have to recompile your flow as it moves throughout different environments. Okay, so it's a little bit better alternative. The other one is pass IDs in as input variables. When you create a variable in Flow, you get two checkboxes at the bottom of that definition of your variable. One says input, one says output. If you define that as an input variable, you can send in whatever the value is to your flow and use that instead of hard coding. The other one is the get element. Simply go out and get the information that you need. Now, this is probably my least favorite because it is a pink element that is costly, but it is better than hard coding. And so if you need things like record type ID or email templates or anything, these are just a sampling of them. There are objects out there that hold all that information for you. So query for record type. Query for your group or member ID, member or your group member fields if you need to find a queue or you need to find a specific group to assign something to. Permission sets are there, price books, all of that stuff. Just go query it. Don't hard code in your standard price book ID. Just go get it. Yes.
So yeah, so typically we use that get to like get the record ID type, but we can just create a variable and then reference from the record.
Yeah, you can.
And pull that.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. What he's suggesting there is that when you're passing your record in, you can reference often some of your IDs right off of that record. Is that?
That was what I was asking, but
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't thought about doing that before. I like that whole
Yeah. Yes.
I think in the get record itself for the ID, you don't need to really create a variable. You can get it from the get element itself. For the record you're referencing.
For the record that we're referencing,
Yes.
we would use the,
ID, you select the ID and select variable. Instead of creating a variable, you can use the ID, you select the ID on the right, on the left, and then select the
So when you're in another
global
element,
variable
say-
and then select
Okay.
the ID.
I'm not sure if I'm tracking.
So if
Are
you're using
you?
the get element to get a record of some sort,
Yep.
you don't have to then say store the ID in a variable and then use
Oh,
that variable.
right.
You can just use
Yeah,
it.
reference it right from the get. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, single
Yeah,
object.
thank you.
Terry,
Yes,
one more thing to like beat this to death.
yeah,
Also think about scale and who is running this flow.
yeah.
Doing a get just to get an ID might be bad if you're thinking about, I'm gonna run this for
Yeah.
10 million records.
Yep,
Let's not do the get.
Yep,
And figure out a
100%.
different way to hard code the ID.
yes, yeah. Yeah, good point. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of why we would, how we would do that here in just a few slides. So tidbit number 6 is put your pink elements toward the end of your flow. Oh, sorry, one more question?
Sorry, I'm more at the beginning end of the flow development.
Yeah.
In terms of hard coding IDs, I think at the end of our screen flows, sometimes when we're generating records.
Yes.
In that case, not referential, but in terms of creating records, is that okay to hard code an ID here? Because we're creating certain record types based on how it performs.
I would not.
Still would, there's still those ways to.
Yeah, I would not.
You know, for
All right, number 6, put all your pink elements when possible toward the end of your flow. This one is, for people who come in and see flows frequently, it's really nice to be able to just go to see what, it just organizes it better. So this is a little bit of a personal preference. I do have some logic or reasoning behind why I suggest this. Let's say we're in a larger flow and we've got pink elements kind of scattered all over the place. We might have updated an account over here, we might have it over here, and maybe it gets ran multiple times in the flow, just depending on how things go. It would be much smarter to, at the bottom of our flow, do a single call to update the account than it is to have it scattered all over the place. If you just design things differently, you'll start to see where you've got some efficiencies that you can gain within your flow design. So think about, whenever possible, put those pink elements toward the end of your flow.
A nice little addition on that also that I've found recently, because I was wrong. I was inefficient. Your debug logs are so much clearer.
Oh, yes,
when
it's
you
true.
just see the assignment
Yes.
versus an update,
Yeah.
you have all the fields, and then do another update. Oh,
Yeah, she said it's much cleaner to see the debug when you're doing debugging, if all of that's set up that way. Just-
So question, I totally agree that putting the pink at the end is best, but what if how do you update the record as you're moving through so if they back up? I'm thinking of an application.
Keep in mind where those transactions reside. And I'm not suggesting that you always can put them at the end of your flow. I am suggesting when possible, do it. There are times where you're going to have to throw a pink element in the middle of your flow for some reason.
So, but it sounds like I could do that with an assignment and just kind of hold on.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's 100% the way you should do it, yes.
Okay.
And I'm gonna hold your question to the end if it's all right, because I want to make sure we get through this. Control backward navigation is tidbit number 7. These will be a little bit more of a lightning round, but I'm not telling you that you can't have a previous button on your screen flow. Don't walk out of here saying that Terry said don't navigate backwards inside of screen flows. What Terry is telling you is, well, I'll take a little rabbit trail. You don't go backwards when it comes to life. I recently went through a divorce, and one of the things that I had in my head the whole time, my mantra was, I'm moving forward. And moving forward, I didn't know whether that was with my wife or going to be without my wife. It ended up being without. So in life, follow that kind of principle. I think that's a good life lesson for you. just move forward. Inside of flows, you can move backwards, but don't do it in life, okay? Don't do it in life. Always move forward, but control it, because think about those transactions. Remember the screen that had the create record right at the very beginning and then it went into screens? What if you had a pink element, you had screens and it had a pink element in between, you backward navigated and then you go forward again, you're hitting that same record again. And you're going to end up creating things that you don't intend to create. So control that backward navigation. Pay attention to where those transactions are running so that you don't end up doing something inadvertent that you don't intend. Inadvertent that you don't intend. That's like saying the same thing twice. Use subflows. I like this one. This is also a new concept, this first one I hadn't thought about, but you can control access by doing subflows. Let's say I've got a user running a flow and it's running in user context, but they need to update a record that they don't have access to. I can use a subflow that runs at a system context level, get that updated. That had never dawned on me that would be an option, but so that was cool. Reuse common processes is your other reason for using the subflow. And then breaking up very large flows. I remember one of my clients I went into, and the gal was just a really nice person. She was so proud of her flow. She opened it up, and a few minutes later we were able to see the content of the flow because it had so many elements inside of this flow. And as we started to study it, we really realized that we had the same types of behaviors happening multiple places throughout the flow. It was a prime example of where we could have broken that thing up, use subflows, consolidate that logic so that when we are fixing something, we fix it one place, we don't have to fix it in 100 places in that flow. When do we use Invocable Apex? This one is more of, in my opinion, it's more of art than it is a science. If I'm dealing with something that has complex logic or calculations, this kind of goes back to Stu's point, or here on this next one, where we're dealing with larger complex data sets, then I'll probably tap the shoulder of a developer and say, hey, help me with this complexity. Let them do the heavy lifting for me. I'm still going to use it, call it with flow. I'm still going to control as much as I possibly can on the flow side, but I'm going to hand off that complexity over to Apex because they can do it. In most cases, they can do it more efficient. I would almost say in all cases if it's very complex. If you need to create a better user experience, Lightning Web Components plugged into your flow would be another place for some of that. And the last tidbit, use the fault path on all your pink elements. You are not guaranteed that a record's going to be there when you think it's supposed to be there. You're not guaranteed that a different admin didn't create a validation rule that all of a sudden breaks your create record or your update record, because you know how those admins are. I am one, so it's okay. But you just don't know. So think about putting a fault path. One of the things that I've done, and I don't do this frequently, but I've had a lot of people look at it and say, that's a pretty cool idea. I've created a subflow that manages fault paths for me, and I simply pass in the information to a subflow. The reason that I will do it is if I need to create maybe I want to create a log of all of the issues that's easier for me to report on and troubleshoot with, then I have an object that I can query and say, oh man, this thing's happening hundreds of times a day. I should probably fix it. It also allows me to have a common screen element that the way that I report back to the user what the error is. So if you're interested in how I did that, let me know. I can certainly put something together for you. But remember to put your fault paths in. All right, as promised, all of the resources and the items, I've got those on the slides. This presentation will be available for you to download, so I don't know exactly how they're doing that, but you'll be able to get to these somehow, probably through the Whova app. And that is Beyond No Pink and Loose. Any other questions? Yeah.
I've been working with flows for a long time, bulkification is, it's still the thing that breaks my brain. And Flow has gotten so many updates, I'm like, when do you use loops, when do you not, when does Flow take care of it, when, like, how do you, because we have some stuff where we're hitting transaction limits, and I'm like, is it just because we're asking to do too much, or are we building an inefficient flow? And I look at it and I go,
Maybe. Yeah, it's maybe. It's hard to say. But hopefully the description of how the transactions actually are structured,
Yeah.
maybe go back and analyze those flows
Yeah.
and see, is it inefficient or is it
I mean,
something
is there
else?
like a hard and fast rule of like, use a loop when these scenarios? Is that like a bulkification thing, or is that?
How many
because I-
records are you looping through? Because you will hit, there is a limit of number of what is it? I forget how they call it, but number of times you can hit touching an element inside of a flow. I forget what that limit is, but
They got rid of the limit,
they got rid of it?
yeah,
Okay, sweet, thank you.
thankfully.
Yeah,
But you can still hit CPU time.
That's a different issue.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think maybe, I think that might be right.
I
Cool.
think the other problem is all your flows, all your record trigger flows all share the same limit.
Right.
So this flow has 50 lookups, this one has 50 lookups, this one has 50, all three record triggers, now you're getting.
Right.
yeah. Good question,
Just
yes.
another comment, if you're dealing with like encrypted fields.
Encrypted
the
fields.
Elements, you have to use Invocable Apex as well.
Oh, true. Yeah, good call. What he said was if you're dealing with encrypted fields, you're going to have to go to Invocable Flows, or Apex to do it. Yes.
Just wanted to throw a tip out there. Going back to your tip about how you can use a pause screen
Yeah.
to break up the interview and the user has to click next to continue.
Yep.
I've used that before, but I recently enhanced it with an unofficial Salesforce package that's a Flow Auto Advance. So you put that on the screen and
Oh, nice. Nice. Very clever.
Yeah, it rolls through for them instead of them needing to sit.
Yeah. Very cool idea. I love unofficial SF. Any other fans? It's huge. It's amazing. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all being here. And feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. But enjoy the last part of the session.
I just want to say thank